Hey everybody, it is time for another DIY project. This one's going to be a big one, I think, so I may end up chopping it into several different videos as I go, but we'll see what happens. So let's introduce the project. All right, so we're in the garage. You are looking at the project, and this is what happens when you've got a one-car garage and you're raising kids and you're working full-time. So the plan is to replace those crummy looking shells which were in when we bought this place 26 years ago, and then do something about all that down there. So that's the thinking. That's the project. The first thing I did was I measured the dimensions of that back wall in the garage and the washer and dryer. So I had all that, and then instead of doing the cabinet design on paper, going retro with pen and pencil, I'm using a program called SketchUp. It's a 3D program, amazingly easy to use. They may even have a free version, I don't know. But so that's the back wall. There's a little lip there that I'm taking advantage of with these top cabinets. And so this is just to kind of make sure that everything fits, and these are all shells, but then I made more detailed pieces right here where I've actually got the dimensions that are listed out that for each, so those are the top cabinets, and then these are the floor cabinets over here. I've got all those dimensions. So that's the initial design, and then going back to paper, I made a parts list. SketchUp doesn't do that for you, so I made a parts list and then used a program called OptiCutter. So this is the output. It's a free program, and you just put in the sheet size that you have and the kerf and whether the grain matters to each particular piece. Put all the pieces in there, how many you need, and it tells you, it gives you basically a cut diagram for the plywood. I have tried to describe this next component of a cabinet system using videos, and I've failed miserably, so I'm just going to resort to 3D modeling. I'm not the best in the world at it, but I think I'm going to get my point across a little bit faster. Anyway, this is a dado stack. And these are blades that go on a table saw, and so you can stack them up. You can see them in the back. You can stack them up, and instead of making a single thin cut, you can stack them up and make a much wider groove. So just introducing you to the dado stack. We are going to use SketchUp to kind of get this point across. This is an example cabinet, so you're looking at the front right here. And then turning it around, looking at the back, we'll zoom in a little bit. These cabinets are going to have grooves in them in the back. And so we're going to leave a 1/4 inch here. The grooves are going to be a 1/2 inch deep and, or 3/4 inch deep and a 1/2 inch wide. And the purpose for that is we're going to put a backing plate on the back of the cabinets. I used a 1/4 inch thick masonite, and so that takes up a 1/4 inch of the 3/4 inches. And the backing plate serves a couple of different purposes. It avoids you having to look at a bare wall when you open your cabinet doors, but probably more importantly is it adds shear strength to your box, quite a bit of it actually. And I'm using just regular masonite because it's cheap, but if these were cabinets going in a kitchen or someplace that you want them to look a little bit nicer, then you would probably want to go with 1/4 inch finished plywood that has one finished good face on it. So as you can see, the masonite takes up about a 1/2 inch, or leaves a 1/2 inch left for what we call nail rails. And so these are anywhere from, I usually make mine anywhere from 3 inches to 4 inches wide, and they're a 1/2 inch thick. And so these provide you with a good place to put nails into studs when you're hanging your wall cabinets. And what I do is I countersink, and I'll show you that in a little bit or later in the video. A little indentation, and then this is a nail that I angle, well actually it's a screw, I use screws, angled slightly in this way to get those nail rails positioned correctly on the frame. So this is what it looks like when you kind of explode these pieces. So these are wall cabinets, and so what we want to do is this top piece is going to fit right down in here, so that you can't see it. In other words, when you're looking at the sides, this is gonna go down inside, so you're just looking at one smooth piece, like you see right here. So the top pieces have groove. You'll notice it has that backing groove going all the way through it. The side pieces do not. And so we have to cut those differently on the table saw using our dado set. And so here's my effort at modeling a table saw. And then this is a dado stack that's on it. And unfortunately, my table saw, the axle spindle is not long enough to hold any stack wider than a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna have to use a 1/2 inch wide stack instead of 3/4. And it's set to go up a 1/2 inch above the table. And then I use a piece of sacrificial wood that I clamp it to the steel fence because the stack is right up against it and you don't want to damage your metal fence. And then I also put pencil marks right where the blades go in, and then a 1/2 inch over. And we'll show you what those are for in just a second. So this is a top piece. And if you recall the top pieces, we can just run them right through, all the way through. So you can see kind of a close up there. So I'll have to make 2 passes because this is only a 1/2 inch. So I'd run it through once, and then I'd move the fence system back a 1/4 inch, and then cut that spot right there, that part of it. And so those go all the way through. Those are pretty simple. The side pieces, however, are a little trickier on a table saw. So this is how I do it. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways that can be done, but I take the side piece. Remember, it can't go all the way through. So I line it up on the 1/2 inch line where the blade goes. And then I slowly and gently lower this down onto the dado stack until it's cut all the way into it. And then once that's done, then you can pass it through. Oop, I went backwards. Sorry about this. Pass it through. Once it's all the way down, push it through all the way to the other end, and then stop at that pencil mark, and then turn your machine off, and then you can lift it out of there. And what it looks like is, when it comes out, since you didn't go all the way through, it's got this curved edge to it, and so you just get some chisels. I use chisels in a little saw, and I cut that out with, like I said, chisels in a saw very carefully until you get a nice square corner like that. And that's how you make grooves in the back of plywood sheets to put in a backing system that includes a backboard or a back sheet and nail rails. All right. So one additional point I forgot to make was why put grooves in? Well, if you don't, this is what you're going to be looking at, or something like it. All of those components, the backing sheet and the nail rails. And the nail rails, by the way, are somewhat of a misnomer these days. I use wood screws, and I think most people do. Anyhow, that stuff sticks out and it's ugly, and you don't really need to do that if you can hide it. So if you make those grooves, sorry about that everybody, but you can see now, you can't see any of that system back there. It's all hidden. All right. So this is the Bora straight edge system that I use to cut all of the large sheets of plywood for this project. I did a review of it when I first purchased it. It was the most inexpensive system out there by far. And I did a review with pros and cons. I'll be updating that soon. But bottom line is I will probably go a different direction and shell out money for a different system over this. So you can see the review if you want to learn more. Okay, so here's two sides that need to be trued up a little bit. I'm not going to show the actual sawing of them, but I wanted to point something out. The one closest to me right here, it's nice and smooth. There's no marks on it. So that's an edge that was cut at the factory. So this is a factory edge. Whereas this one, you can see those burn marks. There's one there, those kind of stripes going across. Those are where I twisted the circular saw a little bit sideways while I was cutting that. So while I'm truing these up on the table saw, I'm going to put the factory edge, which I know is true and square, I'm going to put that up against the table saw fence and avoid using the cut sides that I made. Here is my table saw. It's a little DeWalt tabletop, and it's too small to handle these big pieces that I'm working with on this project. And so here, coming up, is the answer. Table saw sled that I built. There's a lot of different ideas on YouTube, some really good ones on how to put these things together. So I made this based on several videos I looked at. And then I added this sliding jig right here. It's a stop, basically. And so there's some recessed screws in there. Made this slot on a router table. And so this thing can slide in and out, and it acts as a stop. So as I'm trimming these pieces up, I want to trim them all to the same size. They're going to be a little bit shorter than I designed, but that's okay, as long as they're all the same. And so that's what that stop is going to allow me to do. And this thing has been squared up to the saw blade, so all those cuts are going to be nice and square. And take it from there. Here we go. So all the pieces have been cut, or most of them anyway. And before I take it any further, I wanted to do what we call a dry fit, put the pieces together, make sure there's no big gaps, that they are all square. And so that's what's going on right now. I haven't put any screws or glue or anything, just using these clamps. These are called corner clamps. And then this is a strap clamp. Both of those systems are really handy for cabinets, and everything fits pretty good. And then the best way to check square on a big box like this is to measure the distance, the diagonal distance. So I measured from that corner to this corner and did the same for these two. And they're about a 1/16 of an inch, a little bit more than that off, which is pretty good and easy to adjust when I actually glue this thing up and put the screws in. So pretty happy with that. So the next step is to cut this piece out from here to somewhere up in there. Same thing on this side, so that it fits in that ledge up on the garage. I've turned my attention to this funky ledge. That upper part's not parallel to the lower wall. I made a rough template out of cardboard, had to cut a crazy angle to get it to fit. Transferred that pattern to this piece of test plywood, and it fits pretty good. So I'm going to use this as a template when I start cutting into the side pieces on the cabinets. So I am continuing this this cut here for the back plate and the nail strips on this section right here. I couldn't run it through the table saw, so I made a template, and I could also run it through the router table, and I'm going to use my plunge router to just guide it through in here. All right, next step is to drill some holes for the shelf hangers. And this is a piece of scrap plywood that I tested out. And you can do this after you build the cabinets. You can go in and do it, but it's a heck of a lot easier to use a drill press. Beautiful day today. The rain finally stopped. We've got some sun, so I'm going to do some sanding today, and I'd like to do it outside, which is why it's nice that it's a good day. I don't like doing it in the garage just because of the dust factor. So let me show you a little bit about sanding plywood. First of all, ear protection. I use these religiously for every power tool, but sanding's especially bad, and I go double. I actually use the earplugs as well as the ear muffs and the old mask, which we should all be kind of familiar with by now. So plywood, I make a bunch of notes as I'm cutting, this top, face up, those kind of things, and light pencil. You don't want to do it too deep because this finished plywood is just a thin veneer on top. So you don't want to, write really hard on it so that you can lightly sand it and it'll come out. And you don't have to sand it at this point in time. These are almost ready to be screwed together into the box. But once it is screwed together, it's a little bit harder to reach some of those corners, and so I'm just taking advantage of being able to lay them all out, sand them down using a palm sander with 220 grit. And sanding's boring, so I'm not going to show you video of me actually doing it, but that's my job today. All right, another beautiful day. So I'm cutting, this is a big project. I've got a lot of minutes of video, so I'm going to try and cut it up into bite-sized chunks. And so this is the end of the first chunk, the first video. I think there's going to be 4. I haven't weighted my way through all of the clips that I have. But it should say on the first few seconds of this first video how many total videos I'm going to make of this garage cabinet project. So that's it for now, and hope you tune in for the next installments. Bye. Okay, so this is how you get around that wimpy little miter guide that I showed you. This is called a table saw sled, and it just has these pieces that fit into the grooves. So it slides back and forth, and it's very accurate.